People say money doesn't buy happiness, but they forget it buys something quiet or security. That was what I was after. Not yachts, not trips to Miami, just a life where one flat tire or one layoff didn't send me into a spiral. I live in Boise, Idaho, where the foothills rise sharp and the air carries a crisp edge. My house is a small two-bedroom with uneven steps and a finicky furnace. I bought it in 2016 after landing my systems analyst job at a healthcare tech company. I drive a 2008 Honda Civic with a scratch on the hood and no plans to replace it. Most mornings start the same. Coffee, oatmeal, and a quick glance at my bank account before logging in for work. I liked seeing the numbers tick upward slowly but steadily. $92, $300 became $97, $200, then $13,400. By the summer of 2024, it sat at $113,000. That number meant something. It meant I had done things right. That every skipped vacation, every packed lunch, every time I said no thanks to takeout or drinks or new clothes wasn't in vain. My savings wasn't about hoarding. It was about being ready for emergencies, for opportunities, for the unknown. I didn't talk about it much, not because I was hiding anything, but because people don't always know how to hold someone else's discipline. They turn it into judgment or jealousy or jokes. My brother Nathan once teased, "What are you saving for the end of the world?" No, I wanted to say, I'm saving so that the world doesn't end me. At the time, I didn't realize I wasn't just saving money. I was trusting systems, ones I believed would protect me, ones I thought no one close to me would ever dare touch. And then came the reunion. Every July, our family makes the drive to Coeur d'Alene for a long weekend at my parents' old lakeside cabin. It's always the same grilled food, badly organized relay games, and too many folding chairs. We pretend we're still close even when the conversations thin out after an hour. I arrived early Friday afternoon, the heat already heavy in the air. My dad waved from the porch, beer in hand, and my mom was in the kitchen pretending not to be annoyed about the late arrivals. I unpacked, helped chop fruit, and dodged questions about when I'd finally settle down. Nathan and Sophie showed up just before sunset in a dusty gray SUV. He honked twice and rolled down the window, flashing that same lopsided grin he'd had since he was 17. "Isabella Hale," he shouted, drawing out my name like a game show host. Still off the grid and making spreadsheets, I met him halfway down the dirt path. "Still making jokes that no one laughs at?" I asked. Sophie stepped out of the passenger side in a flowy sundress and sunglasses too big for her face. "Isabella," she sang, "you look the same. Still so disciplined." She hugged me, the kind of embrace that's all surface and no anchor. It had been over a year since I'd seen them in person. Nathan smelled like aftershave and energy drink. Sophie smelled like sunscreen and some pricey floral perfume. They looked good. Tired maybe, but polished in a way I hadn't expected. At dinner, Nathan joked about my hermit lifestyle, asking if I'd taken a vow of silence or just of online dating. Sophie laughed along, but her eyes kept darting to my hands, my nails, my watch, the way I passed the serving bowl, watching me too closely. That night, as the others made s'mores and told the same stories from high school, I caught Sophie staring again. She smiled when I noticed. "You're always so put together, Isabella," she said. "I don't know how you do it." I shrugged. "It's not that hard. I just plan." She nodded, slow and thoughtful, like she was learning something. The next morning, she was already in the kitchen when I came in for coffee. It was just the two of us that afternoon. Everyone else was napping or out on the lake, but Sophie asked if I wanted to walk the shoreline trail with her. I said yes, more out of politeness than anything else. We walked in silence for a while, letting the gravel crunch beneath our shoes. The heat was dry, but the breeze off the water made it bearable. I could hear the distant buzz of a boat and the low murmur of voices from across the bay. "I'm sorry if Nathan teased too much last night," Sophie said suddenly. "He thinks he's being funny." "He always has," I replied, keeping my tone light. She kicked a pebble off the path. "You've really built something solid, haven't you?" "I guess I said it's taken time." Sophie stopped walking. "Isabella," she said, her voice shifting softer, "I need to tell you something." I turned toward her, a knot forming before I even knew why. "I'm pregnant," she said, eyes already watering. "I found out last week." I blinked. "Wow, congratulations." She gave a tiny half laugh. It's not good news. We're broke. Like really broke. Nathan's truck got repossessed last month. We're 3 months behind on rent. And now this. The knot tightened. I don't know how we're going to make it, she continued. I'm working double shifts at the diner. He's between jobs again. I'm scared. I heard myself say I can help. I didn't even think about it. I can send you something, get you caught up. No, she said quickly, shaking her head. No, I wasn't telling you to get anything from you. I would never ask. But she was, and we both knew it. Seriously, Sophie, I said. Whatever you need, I mean it. She nodded, wiping at her eyes. Thanks. I don't know what to do anymore. We walked the rest of the way in silence. When we got back to the cabin, Nathan was playing horseshoes with our cousins like nothing was wrong. That night, I went to bed thinking about numbers again, how much I could give without noticing it too much. The next morning, I came into the kitchen earlier than usual. The house was still quiet. No coffee brewing yet. No laughter from the porch. Sophie was at the table leaning over my laptop. She looked up too quickly. Oh, sorry, she said, her fingers frozen mid-trackpad. I was just checking the weather. My phone died overnight. I nodded, swallowing the hesitation rising in my throat. Sure, no problem. She stepped back, giving me space. I walked over and closed the lid without looking at the screen. Storm's supposed to roll in around 4 o'clock, she added, as if that proved something. Then she smiled too wide and slipped out of the room. I stood there for a long second. My coffee mug was still in the cabinet. The laptop had been open, something I rarely do when I'm not using it. I didn't remember leaving it like that. I didn't remember logging out. A flicker of doubt passed through me. I brushed it away. It was probably nothing. Still later that morning, I changed my banking password just in case. But I didn't go further. I didn't reset the security questions. I didn't enable two-factor authentication. I didn't even log out of anything because it felt ridiculous. Because this was Sophie. Because suspicion felt like betrayal, and I wasn't ready to betray anyone, especially not my own family. Instead, I kept thinking about the number I'd gone to bed with. $5,000. 5 wouldn't break me. It wouldn't even scratch the surface. I'd still have over $100,000 in savings, and if it meant they could breathe easier, stop falling behind on rent, prepare for the baby wasn't that worth it. I didn't bring it up, not yet. But I started imagining how I might frame the offer. Something soft, something that didn't make them feel pitied. Maybe I could say it was a gift, a gesture no strings. That afternoon, we all sat by the dock pretending things were as simple as the sun on the water. Nathan cracked beers and tossed out one-liners. Sophie leaned against the railing and hummed along to the Bluetooth speaker. I caught her looking at me again, quick, unreadable. I looked away first. Sunday came fast. They left before lunch. Sophie hugged me hard and said, "You're the best, Isabella. You really are." And then they were gone. I drove home that afternoon already planning the transfer in my head. Monday morning started like every other. I got up early, fed the neighbor's cat, brewed a cup of coffee, and sat down at the kitchen table. It was cloudy outside, the kind of quiet gray that makes everything feel slower. I opened my laptop, still half thinking about whether $5,000 was too much or not enough. I logged into my bank account, expecting to see the same familiar number that had greeted me for months now, 6 digits neat and earned. But what I saw stopped my breath. 0. I blinked, refreshed, the page waited. Still 0. I stared for a few more seconds, my mind refusing to believe what my eyes were showing me. I thought it had to be a glitch, some temporary error. Maybe the site was down. Maybe I had accidentally logged into an old account. I checked again. Same result. I didn't even realize I was standing until I felt the coffee slosh against the side of the mug in my hand. I dialed customer service with fingers that didn't feel like mine. "Thank you for calling Mountain View Credit Union," the voice chirped. "How can I help you today?" "This is Isabella Hale," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm logged into my account and there's something wrong. My savings account is showing a 0 balance." "That's not possible." There was a pause on the other end. Then a softer voice. "Let me pull up your file. Can you verify your full name and the last 4 digits of your social ID?" Another pause. I'm seeing a series of outgoing transfers from Friday night through Sunday, she said carefully, all totaling $113,000. My throat went dry. Where did it go? Several external accounts. I'll email you the transaction list. The email landed before we even ended the call. I clicked through scanning line after line. $18,500, $12,000, $22,000 each withdrawal, like a brick in my chest. Then I saw the names on the receiving accounts. Sophie R. Hale, Nathan J. Hale. The room around me faded. My brother, his wife, the ones who smiled across my dinner table and said, "Thank you for the lemonade," the ones who hugged me goodbye yesterday morning. I sat still for a long time. Then I stood up, packed a small overnight bag, and drove to Spokane without telling anyone where I was going. I got there just after noon. Their apartment complex looked like it had been built fast and cheap sun-bleached siding, a sagging second-floor balcony, and a row of uneven mailboxes out front. I remembered it from one visit months ago, but now it felt unfamiliar, stripped of any charm I might have pretended to see before. I knocked once, then again. Nathan opened the door in gym shorts and a wrinkled t-shirt, barefoot, and holding a half-empty bottle of lemon soda. "Isabella," he said with a lopsided smile. "Didn't expect to see you today." "Everything okay?" I didn't answer. Just walked past him into the apartment. Sophie was on the couch scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. She glanced up, blinked once, then slowly set the phone down. She was wearing one of Nathan's sweatshirts, oversized and faded. I know I said. The air in the room tightened. Nathan shut the door behind us. Nobody asked, still pretending. "My account," I said quietly. "All of it gone." Sophie gave a single soft laugh like I'd told a mildly surprising story. "You're being dramatic. You used your names," I said. "You didn't even bother hiding it." "Relax," she said, brushing imaginary lint from her knee. "We needed it more than you." "You're always fine, Isabella. You'll bounce back." Nathan leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "You save money like a doomsday prepper. You weren't doing anything with it." I pulled out my phone. "Then you won't mind the consequences." Sophie sat up straighter. "What are you doing?" I was already dialing. My thumb didn't shake. My voice didn't rise. It wasn't anger anymore. It was precision. 911. "What's your emergency?" "I need to report a theft," I said. "A large-scale financial theft, and I'm standing in the apartment of the people who took it." Nathan's face dropped. Sophie didn't laugh this time. I gave the address without hesitation. "Yes," I said when they asked. "I'll wait outside." They were arrested 3 days later. I wasn't there to see it, but I heard from a neighbor that Nathan opened the door shirtless with a smirk that melted when the badge came out. Sophie cried. Of course someone recorded it from across the lot, and it ended up on the neighborhood Facebook group. I didn't watch it. The police report was cold factual. Charges listed in black ink: identity theft, fraud, conspiracy. No room for sentiment, no mention of shared childhoods or lake trips or holiday photos. That night my phone rang. It was my mother. I stared at the screen for a full minute before answering. "Isabella," she sobbed before I could speak. "What have you done? She's your brother's wife. She's pregnant." I said nothing. "She's pregnant," she repeated. "You called the police on your own family." "She's not pregnant," I said. Silence. "What?" She lied. "There is no baby," the investigator told me. She admitted it under questioning. More silence. I could hear my father's voice in the background asking what was going on, then a sharp curse his. I think I'd never heard him say anything like that. "I need to go," she whispered, and the line went dead. I stood in the middle of my kitchen phone, still in hand. The dishwasher beeped that it had finished. A breeze came through the open window and moved the corner of a receipt on the counter. Everything around me was normal, steady, the kind of ordinary I'd worked so hard to protect. The next morning, I emailed the detective to confirm I'd be pressing charges and participating fully in the case. She responded quickly, grateful, she said, and told me what would happen next. There'd be a trial, maybe restitution, maybe not, but the process had begun and I wasn't stepping back. The trial didn't take long. The evidence was clean. The The transfers were traced directly back to them down to the IP address in their apartment. Ryan, the digital forensic analyst I hired, testified with a calm clarity that made their defense look like theater. Nathan sat there like it was all beneath him, his jaw clenched, his hands folded like a man enduring an inconvenience. Sophie cried through most of it, dabbing at her eyes like someone auditioning for mercy. Neither of them looked at me. The judge called it deliberate and predatory, called it a betrayal layered in both emotional and financial cruelty. I didn't flinch. Nathan took a plea deal, 6 years in federal prison, no chance of parole for at least 5. Sophie got 2 years and 5 years probation. She made a short statement at sentencing. Something about desperation, something about how sorry she was for the confusion, but she never once used my name, never looked at me. There was no apology. I recovered $71,000 through the court's asset seizure. Nathan had bought a new car with my money leased under Sophie's name, but paid in full. They drained the checking account, and there was some jewelry the court let me claim. The rest, $42,000, was just gone. Groceries, rent, gambling, maybe beer, ordinary life paid for by the quiet, disciplined one in the family. After sentencing, I walked out alone. No one waited for me. No messages, no apology calls from extended family. My parents didn't show. I didn't expect them to. There was no screaming match, no cathartic confrontation, just the sound of my shoes on the courthouse steps in the cold bite of January air. When I got home, I made tea, sat by the window. The sun was low, coloring the edge of the snowbank, a soft gold. I didn't feel triumphant, just tired, but I wasn't broken. I changed every password I owned, closed every account, and opened new ones, spoke to my lawyer about sealing certain files. I bought a new lock for my door, not because I feared break-ins, but because I was learning how to be someone who guards things better. The rest of them stayed silent, and I started again. 8 months later, my life is quieter in ways that feel earned. I still live in the same house, drive the same car, drink the same morning coffee, but nothing is exactly the same. Not really. I've rewritten the rules starting with myself. The first thing I rebuilt was control. New bank, new credit union, two-factor everything. Security questions that no one could guess, not even someone who knew me since childhood. I learned how to encrypt folders, how to monitor logins, how to close digital doors without slamming them. I started saving again, slowly, patiently. It's not 6 figures, not yet, but every dollar means more now. It's not just money. It's proof I survived something that was meant to leave me gutted. I don't talk to Nathan or Sophie. I don't answer the calls from unknown numbers that started showing up last month. I don't check the neighborhood Facebook page where someone said Sophie posted a Bible quote about forgiveness. That's her business, not mine. Instead, I started hiking more. I take longer walks. I bought a used camera and started capturing small things. Sunlight on cedar bark, the curve of frost on a fence post. I joined a trivia group at a local brewery where people only know me as Isabella, the woman who knows weird geography facts. I'm dating again. His name is Ethan. He's kind and a little awkward and knows when to leave things alone. I haven't told him everything yet. I probably will eventually, but for now, we laugh. We sit in silence that doesn't ache. And when he asks about my past, I tell him I used to save too much and trust too easily. The rest can come later. No one touches my accounts but me now. No one else holds the keys. Not to my passwords, my finances, or my future. What they took changed everything, but what I built after it's mine. Isabella's story teaches the importance of vigilance and self-protection even among family. Her trust in her brother and sister-in-law led to the devastating loss of her life savings, highlighting that emotional bonds do not guarantee integrity. The betrayal underscores the need to secure personal assets with robust measures like two-factor authentication and unique security questions, as Isabella later implemented. It also reveals the danger of assuming others respect your discipline. Her savings built through sacrifice were dismissed as expendable by those closest to her. The experience emphasizes setting boundaries and recognizing when sympathy is exploited, as seen in Sophie's manipulative pregnancy claim. Isabella's response, pursuing justice without hesitation, shows the strength required to prioritize accountability over familial loyalty when trust is broken. Finally, her recovery, though incomplete, and her choice to rebuild through small, deliberate steps like hiking and new connections demonstrate resilience. The lesson is clear. Protect your resources fiercely, trust cautiously, and rebuild with intention. No one else holds the keys to your future.
The Thanksgiving dinner conversation had taken its predictable turn toward career assessments. And as usual, I found myself in the crosshairs of family judgment. At 31, I was still the disappointment, the one who never lived up to her potential, according to the annual performance reviews disguised as holiday gatherings. Maya still works at that little cafe downtown, my sister Jennifer announced to the assembled relatives, her voice carrying that particular tone of pity mixed with superiority that she'd perfected over the years. You know, the one with the mismatched chairs and the chipped coffee cups. Very bohemian. Our cousin David, fresh from his latest promotion at his accounting firm, shook his head sympathetically. That's rough, Maya. Have you thought about going back to school? Maybe getting into something more stable? I could talk to my firm about entry-level positions. I continued slicing the turkey, my movements calm and practiced. That's very kind of you, David. I appreciate the offer. She's been saying she'll figure things out for 10 years now, Jennifer continued, warming to her subject. Remember when she graduated? We all thought she'd be running some big company by now with that business degree. Instead, she's asking people if they want fries with that. Mom reached over and patted my hand. Honey, there's nothing wrong with honest work. But Jennifer does have a point about your potential. You were always so smart in school. The weight of their collective concern pressed down on the dining room like a heavy blanket. Uncle Robert, who ran a small insurance agency, cleared his throat importantly. The service industry is fine for young people, but at some point you need to think about your future. Benefits, retirement planning, career advancement. These things matter. Maya doesn't think that far ahead, Jennifer said, cutting her turkey with surgical precision. She's always been the dreamer in the family. Remember her college plans? She was going to change the world, start her own business, make millions. She laughed, but not unkindly. We all have those phases. I refilled water glasses around the table, moving with the practiced efficiency that comes from years of actually working in food service. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was literally serving them while they discussed my serving career, but I kept my expression neutral. I worry about her, Dad said quietly. 31 and still living paycheck to paycheck. When I was her age, I had a house, 2 kids, and a pension plan. Different times, Dad, I said softly. The economy's not the same. The economy's fine if you have marketable skills, Jennifer countered. Look at Tom. She gestured toward her husband, who was busy explaining cryptocurrency to anyone who would listen. He pivoted into tech consulting 3 years ago. Now he's pulling in 6 figures. Tom nodded enthusiastically. It's all about adapting, Maya. The old ways of doing business are dead. You need to think disruptively, embrace innovation, leverage synergies. He paused to take a sip of wine. Have you considered coding boot camps? I know guys who went from zero to software developer in 12 weeks. Maya's not really the tech type, Jennifer said protectively. She's more people-oriented. Customer service, hospitality, that sort of thing. She's actually very good with difficult customers. I've seen her handle some real jerks at that cafe. The backhanded compliments kept flowing like wine, each one delivered with genuine affection and concern. They loved me, I knew that. They were worried about me, and in their minds they had every right to be. From their perspective, I was the family underachiever, the cautionary tale, the reminder that talent without direction leads nowhere. Grandma Chin, who'd been quietly eating and observing, finally spoke up. In my day you picked a job and stuck with it. All this jumping around trying to find yourself. It's nonsense. Maya needs to pick something practical and commit. Exactly, Uncle Robert said. Security, stability, a clear path forward. That's what builds a life. The conversation shifted to Jennifer's recent promotion to regional sales manager, and I found myself in the familiar position of family audience, listening to success stories while my own life was held up as the counterexample. Jennifer had always been the golden child, straight A's, perfect college trajectory, corporate ladder climbing with military precision. The thing about sales, Jennifer was explaining, is that it's not just about the product. It's about relationships, trust, understanding what people really need. I've doubled my territory's revenue in 18 months because I focus on long-term client development, not just quick wins. That's the kind of strategic thinking Maya needs to develop, Mom said, beaming at Jennifer with obvious pride. Real business acumen. I stood to clear the first course, stacking plates with the muscle memory that comes from thousands of restaurant shifts. As I moved around the table, fragments of conversation followed me like background music. Maya was always the creative one, Aunt Linda was saying. Remember those stories she used to write? Maybe she should try freelance writing, blogging, something like that. Creative doesn't pay the bills, Uncle Robert replied pragmatically. She needs something with a steady paycheck and benefits. In the kitchen, I scraped plates and loaded the dishwasher with methodical efficiency. Through the doorway, I could hear Jennifer launching into her 5-year plan, complete with target income goals and professional development benchmarks. She'd always been good at presentations. When I returned with the main course, the conversation had evolved into general career advice, with me as the implicit case study. The key is specialization, Tom was saying. Pick a niche, become the expert, then monetize that expertise. Look at Gary Vaynerchuk, Pat Flynn, Tim Ferriss. They all started with specific knowledge areas and built empires around them. Maya's problem is she's a generalist, Jennifer observed. Good at lots of things, not exceptional at any one thing. That doesn't translate well in today's market. David nodded sagely. Employers want deep expertise, not broad competence. Maya needs to pick a lane and dominate it. I served the roasted vegetables, accepting their analysis of my shortcomings with the grace I'd learned from years of customer service. Smile, nod, don't take it personally, keep moving forward. These were survival skills that translated surprisingly well from restaurants to family dinners. Have you thought about going back to school? Cousin Sarah asked. Maybe an MBA? I know it's expensive, but it could open doors. More debt probably isn't the answer, Mom said practically. She needs something that pays off quickly. Trade school, Uncle Robert suggested. Plumbing, electrical work, HVAC. Those guys make good money and there's always demand. The suggestions kept coming, each one well-intentioned and completely missing the mark. I appreciated their concern, truly I did, but listening to them plan my future felt like watching strangers discuss a movie I'd already seen. They were operating with incomplete information, drawing conclusions from limited data, making assumptions that seemed logical from their perspective but were fundamentally flawed. The important thing is to start somewhere, Jennifer said, reaching for my hand with genuine sisterly affection. Even small steps forward are better than staying stuck. And you're not getting any younger, Maya. Time doesn't wait for perfect plans. I squeezed her hand back, touched by the sincerity in her voice despite the sting of her words. You're right. Change is important. Maybe after the holidays we could sit down and really map out some options, she continued. I could introduce you to some people in my network, see if anything resonates. Sometimes it's just about getting in front of the right opportunities. The dessert course arrived with more career counseling. Grandma Chen shared stories of relatives who'd made something of themselves through determination and practical choices. Tom offered to review my resume and suggest improvements. David promised to keep his ears open for entry-level positions that might suit my skill set. It was during the coffee service that my phone began buzzing insistently in my pocket. I'd set it to silent for dinner, but whoever was calling wasn't giving up. After the fourth call in 2 minutes, I excused myself to check the messages. Sorry, I should probably take this, I said, stepping toward the kitchen. It might be work-related. See? Even on Thanksgiving, the service industry never stops, Jennifer said to the table. No boundaries, no respect for personal time. That's exactly what I'm talking about. In the kitchen, I looked at my phone screen. 7 missed calls from James Morrison, the journalist who'd been working on the Forbes article for 3 months. I called him back, keeping my voice low. James, sorry I missed your calls. I'm at family dinner. Maya, thank God. Listen, I know it's a holiday, but we need to confirm your interview slot for tomorrow. The CEO of the Year issue is going to print on Monday, and we're doing final photo shoots this weekend. Can you be at the Manhattan studio by 10 a.m.? I glanced toward the dining room, where my family was undoubtedly continuing their analysis of my life choices. Yes, that works fine. Perfect. And congratulations again on the recognition. When the Forbes board reviewed this year's candidates, Your company's growth trajectory was just phenomenal. Bootstrapping from a single cafe to a 60-location chain in 5 years, all while maintaining those sustainability standards and worker equity programs? That's the kind of story our readers love. I appreciate that, James. I'll see you tomorrow. I hung up and stood in the kitchen for a moment, listening to the voices from the dining room. They were discussing holiday shopping plans now, having apparently exhausted the topic of my career deficiencies. I could slip back in and continue playing the role they'd assigned me, or I could let the natural conversation flow take us to what was inevitably coming. When I returned to the table, Jennifer was in the middle of explaining her Christmas budget strategy. It's all about planning ahead and setting realistic expectations. Impulse purchases are what kill most people's holiday finances. I refilled coffee cups and settled back into my chair waiting. The call had been loud enough that someone might have caught fragments of it, and I knew it was only a matter of time before curiosity got the better of them. It was Tom who bit first. "Work emergency?" he asked with the practiced sympathy of someone who'd fielded his share of holiday interruptions. "Just confirming some scheduling for tomorrow," I said. "You're working on Black Friday?" Mom asked with concern. "Honey, that's one of the busiest shopping days of the year. You'll be exhausted." "It's not exactly work," I said carefully. "More like a meeting." Jennifer's eyebrows rose slightly. She'd always been good at reading between lines. "What kind of meeting?" "Job interview." The table's attention shifted toward me with the subtle intensity of a family that sensed developing news. I could feel their collective hope that maybe, finally, Maya was taking some initiative in fixing her life. "Something like that," I said. "That's wonderful," Mom exclaimed. "What kind of position?" "Corporate management." I took a sip of coffee, buying time. The moment was approaching faster than I'd expected, and I wasn't sure I was ready for the aftermath. For 5 years I'd maintained the careful fiction that let them see what they expected to see. It hadn't been malicious. More like a form of protective camouflage that allowed family gatherings to proceed without the complications that truth sometimes brings. "It's in the food service industry," I said, which was technically accurate. The slight deflation around the table was palpable but polite. They were trying so hard to be supportive, even when I was seemingly confirming their worst fears about my lack of ambition. "Well, that's your area of expertise," Jennifer said with determined positivity. "Maybe management level? Shift supervisor? That could be a good stepping stone to bigger things." "Something like that," I repeated. Uncle Robert cleared his throat. "The important thing is upward mobility. Make sure this position has advancement opportunities. You don't want to get stuck in another dead-end situation." My phone buzzed again. A text this time from my assistant. "Media interviews scheduled for 2 p.m. Saturday. Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, and TechCrunch confirmed. Should I push the acquisition meeting to next week?" I typed back quickly. "Push the meeting. Keep the media schedule." When I looked up, Jennifer was watching me with increased curiosity. "Busy day tomorrow?" "Seems like it." The conversation moved on to other topics, but I caught Jennifer shooting me occasional glances throughout the remainder of dinner. She'd always been perceptive, and something in my demeanor was pinging her radar. I made a mental note to be more careful. It was during the final cleanup that my phone rang again. This time, James Morrison's call came through the dining room speakers as I was putting away leftovers. My phone connected to the sound system I'd helped Dad set up last Christmas. "Maya, one more quick thing about tomorrow." James's voice filled the room clearly. "The photographer wants to do some shots at your flagship location. You know, the original cafe where it all started. Can we get access around noon?" The kitchen went completely silent. Every family member in earshot had frozen mid-motion, trying to process what they'd just heard. "That should be fine," I said, moving quickly to disconnect the call, but it was too late. "Also," James continued, oblivious to my audience, "the Forbes social media team wants to coordinate the announcement of your CEO of the Year recognition with your company's channels. Should they reach out to your marketing director directly, or do you prefer to handle media coordination personally?" I managed to end the call and turned to face a kitchen full of family members staring at me with expressions ranging from confusion to shock. Jennifer spoke first, her voice carefully controlled. "Maya, what exactly is happening tomorrow?" The moment had arrived. 5 years of careful misdirection, of letting them see the server instead of the CEO, of maintaining the comfortable fiction that kept family dynamics simple and predictable. I could continue the deflection, offer some explanation that would let them maintain their assumptions, or I could let the truth finish reshaping their understanding. I set down the dish towel I'd been holding and looked around at their faces. I have a Forbes interview tomorrow. For their CEO of the Year recognition. The silence stretched for several long seconds. Tom was the first to break it. Forbes? As in Forbes magazine? Yes. CEO of the Year? Jennifer's voice was barely above a whisper. Yes. Uncle Robert sat down heavily in the nearest chair. Maya, what company do you run? Chin Hospitality Group. We operate 63 sustainable cafe locations across 11 states, with revenue last year of just over $400 million. The kitchen remained silent as they processed this information. I could see the mental calculations happening, the rapid reassessment of everything they thought they knew about my life. Mom found her voice first. The little cafe downtown. That's yours. It's where I started, yes. The company has grown since then. Grown how much? David asked quietly. We're valued at approximately $1.2 billion. I own 78% of it. Jennifer leaned against the counter as if she needed the support. Maya, are you telling us you're a billionaire? On paper, yes. The questions came in a rush after that. How long had this been going on? Why hadn't I told them? What exactly did my company do? How had they missed something this significant? I answered as best I could, explaining the timeline, the business model, the deliberate choice to maintain a low profile. I told them about the sustainable sourcing initiatives, the profit-sharing programs for employees, the expansion strategy that had taken a single cafe and turned it into a regional powerhouse. But you still work at that little place downtown, Mom said, struggling to reconcile the information. I see you there when I drive by. I do spend time there, yes. It's important to stay connected to the ground-level operations. But I'm not exactly working as a server anymore. Tom was running calculations on his phone. Maya, if these numbers are right, you're worth more than everyone in this room combined. By a factor of a lot. The family dinner had transformed into something between an interrogation and a celebration, with everyone trying to process the magnitude of what they'd just learned. Questions about my business mixed with apologies for their earlier comments. Amazement at my success blended with confusion about my secrecy. It was Jennifer who finally asked the question I'd been expecting. Why didn't you tell us? All these years, all these conversations about your career, your future. Why let us think you were struggling? I considered how to answer that. The truth was complicated, involving family dynamics and personal choice and the strange comfort of being underestimated. It was easier, I said finally. Family relationships can get complicated when money becomes part of the equation. I liked that you loved me just as Maya, not as Maya the Sioux. We would have been proud of you, Dad said quietly. We are proud of you. I know. But pride can change things too. I wanted to build something substantial before letting business success change how we related to each other. The evening transformed after that. The same people who'd been offering career advice an hour earlier were now asking for business insights. The conversation shifted from concern about my future to curiosity about my strategies, from worry about my stability to amazement at my achievements. But the most meaningful moment came when Jennifer pulled me aside as the evening was winding down. I owe you an apology, she said. Not just for tonight but for years of assuming I knew what your life looked like. You don't owe me anything, I said. You were being a good sister looking out for me. I was being condescending, she said firmly. There's a difference. I thought I understood your choices, your capabilities, your potential. I was completely wrong. We hugged then and I felt something shift in our relationship. The dynamic that had defined us for decades, successful Jennifer and struggling Maya, was being replaced by something more complex and honest. The Forbes article would come out on Monday, along with the interview and photo spread that would make my business success public knowledge. But the real revelation had happened around a family dinner table, over turkey and wine and the gradual understanding that people are rarely exactly what they appear to be. As I drove home that night, I reflected on the evening's transformation. For 5 years I'd been living a double life of sorts, billionaire CEO by day, underachieving family member by weekend. It had been sustainable until it wasn't, protective until it became limiting, simple until it became complicated. The truth had a way of surfacing eventually, And tonight it had emerged not through any grand gesture or dramatic reveal, but through the ordinary intrusion of business calls into family time. Sometimes the most significant changes happen in the most mundane moments. A phone call during dinner, a journalist's voice over speakers, a conversation that suddenly veers into unexpected territory. Tomorrow would bring the Forbes interview, the photo shoots, the media attention that would make my business success officially public. But tonight had brought something more valuable: the restoration of honesty in my most important relationships, and the relief that comes from no longer managing two separate versions of the same life. The family dynamics would continue evolving, adapting to this new information about who I actually was and what I'd actually built. But that evolution would happen authentically, grounded in truth rather than assumption, reality rather than perception. And perhaps most importantly, I'd learned that the people who love you will find a way to love the truth of you, even when that truth reshapes everything they thought they knew about your life. For 3 years I watched Mom get weaker. The diagnosis came on a Tuesday: stage 3 breast cancer. Aggressive. Expensive. The oncologist's office handed us a treatment plan that looked more like a mortgage statement. $225,000 for the full course of treatment, surgery, radiation, and medications. Dad sat in the passenger seat of my car afterward, staring at the paperwork. "We don't have this kind of money," he whispered. "The insurance will cover maybe 60%. Maybe." I'd been living at home since my divorce 2 years earlier, paying $800 monthly rent to help with household expenses. What my parents didn't know was that I'd been rebuilding my life methodically. The marketing consultancy I started from their basement had grown into something substantial. While they saw me in pajamas working on my laptop, I was pulling in $35,000 monthly from Fortune 500 clients. "Don't worry about the money," I told Dad that afternoon. "I'll handle it." He looked at me like I'd offered to fly to the moon. "Honey, this isn't a few $1,000s for car repairs." But I'd already made the decision. The next morning I called the oncology center's financial coordinator. "This is regarding Patricia Chen's treatment plan. I'll be handling all payments directly." The treatment started immediately. Every 2 weeks another bill arrived. Surgery, $45,000. Chemotherapy cycles, $12,000 each. Radiation, $28,000. Medications, $3,200 monthly. I paid each invoice the day it arrived, wire transfers from my business account. Mom never asked where the money came from. During her first round of chemo, when she was too sick to keep food down, she held my hand in the hospital room. "I don't know how we're managing this financially," she whispered. "Your father says the insurance is better than expected." I squeezed her hand. "Don't worry about money. Just focus on getting better." What I didn't tell her was that I'd also been covering the household expenses she couldn't manage. Mortgage payments of $2,100 monthly. Utilities averaging $340. Groceries, car payments, her prescriptions. By month 6 of treatment I was spending $18,000 monthly on family expenses beyond my rent. My business was growing, so the money flowed easily. But more than that, seeing Mom get stronger made every dollar worth it. The treatments worked. After 18 months, Mom's scans came back clear. The cancer was gone. At her final oncology appointment, Dr. Martinez smiled as he reviewed her charts. "You've responded incredibly well to treatment. I want to see you every 3 months for monitoring, but you're officially in remission." Mom cried. Dad cried. I cried. We went to dinner that night at her favorite Italian restaurant and she raised her wine glass. "To beating cancer," she said. "And to whatever miracle made it possible for us to afford the best treatment available." I clinked my glass against hers, knowing that miracle had been 24 months of strategic invoice payments totaling $267,000. But seeing her healthy and happy was worth every cent. That's when my sister Sarah entered the picture. Sarah lived in Portland with her husband Marcus and their 2 kids. She'd visited twice during Mom's entire treatment, both times for less than 48 hours. During Mom's lowest points, when she couldn't keep water down and Dad was falling apart from stress, Sarah sent care packages with organic tea and motivational books. But 3 weeks after Mom's remission celebration, Sarah announced she was getting divorced. "It's been coming for months," she told Mom during their daily phone call, which I overheard from the kitchen. "Marcus wants the house and his lawyer says I might not get much. I need to start over somewhere I have family support." Within days, the conversation shifted from Sarah needing emotional support to Sarah needing financial support. And housing support. And childcare support for 8-year-old Emma and 6-year-old Jake. She could use your old room, Mom suggested to me one evening in November. You've been talking about getting your own place anyway. I had been talking about it mostly because my business required more space and privacy for client calls. But I hadn't expected the conversation to become urgent. There's no rush, I said. Sarah can have the guest room until she finds something permanent. Mom shook her head. The guest room is too small for her and the kids. And she'll need time to get back on her feet. Maybe 6 months, maybe a year. The timeline kept extending. By Thanksgiving, Sarah had driven cross-country with a U-Haul and 2 confused children. She moved into the guest room temporarily while Mom started rearranging the house around her daughter's new life. We should convert the garage into a playroom, Mom announced. Emma and Jake need space to spread out. The basement could be Sarah's office, Dad added. She'll need somewhere professional for video calls once she starts job hunting. I noticed my rent was never discussed. Even though Sarah wasn't contributing financially, and even though her kids had added $400 monthly to grocery bills and utilities, my $800 monthly payment continued like clockwork. I didn't mind. The house felt alive with children's laughter again, and Mom seemed energized by having grandchildren nearby. Christmas morning changed everything. Sarah had been living there for a month. The kids had settled into new schools. Sarah had started a remote customer service job that paid $2,800 monthly, barely enough to cover her car payment, child support obligations to Marcus, and basic personal expenses. We were opening presents in the living room. Emma and Jake were surrounded by toys that Dad had clearly overspent on. Sarah opened a jewelry box containing diamond earrings that must have cost $800. Then Mom handed me my gift, a Target gift card for $25. I know you don't need much, Mom said, hugging me. You're so self-sufficient. I smiled and thanked her, but something felt off. The diamond earrings for Sarah, the expensive toys for kids who'd been in the house for 30 days, and a gift card for me. I brushed it off as Mom wanting to make Sarah and the kids feel welcomed. The conversation after dinner revealed the real situation. We need to talk about housing arrangements, Mom said, settling into the couch beside Dad. Sarah was upstairs putting the kids to bed. Sarah needs stability, Dad continued. The kids are finally adjusting to their schools here. She can't afford her own place on her current salary, and moving again would be traumatic. Mom nodded. Your room is perfect for her. It has the ensuite bathroom and it's closest to the kids' room across the hall. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What about me? You've been saying you want your own place, Mom replied. This might be the perfect timing. Sarah needs to be here with family support. You're independent and successful. It makes sense. Sarah's planning to stay long-term? I asked. Until she gets back on her feet, Dad said. Maybe 2 or 3 years, depending on how quickly she can build her career back up. I looked around the living room where I'd been living for 2 years, where I'd worked 70-hour weeks building my business, where I'd managed every aspect of Mom's cancer treatment while maintaining the household. When would you need me to move out? We were thinking New Year, Mom said gently. That gives you a few weeks to find something. And Sarah could start the new year fresh with her own space. January 2nd. That was the deadline. I spent the next week apartment hunting, though my heart wasn't in it. I'd saved Mom's life with $225,000 in medical payments. I'd kept the household running with another $50,000 in mortgage and utility payments during her treatment. I'd never missed my rent, never caused problems, never brought drama into their home. But Sarah needed my room. On New Year's Eve, I sat in my room packing boxes while Sarah's kids ran through the hallways playing with their Christmas toys. I could hear Mom and Sarah in the kitchen, laughing as they planned renovations for Sarah's room. Paint colors, new furniture, closet organization systems. The final conversation happened on January 1st. I found a place, I told Mom and Dad over breakfast. I can move out this week. Mom looked relieved. That's wonderful, honey. We're so proud of how independent you've become. Sarah's excited to have her own space, Dad added. The kids need consistency and she needs to focus on rebuilding her life. I nodded. I understand. Family first. Exactly, Mom smiled. Sarah's been through so much with the divorce. She needs our support right now. That afternoon I started making phone calls. The first call was to Blue Cross Blue Shield. I need to cancel Patricia Chen's supplemental insurance policy, effective immediately. I'm the policyholder and have been covering the premiums. Mr. Chen, this policy covers her cancer monitoring appointments and potential future treatments. Are you sure you want to cancel? I'm sure. The second call was to Mom's Oncology Center. This is regarding Patricia Chen's account. I'll no longer be covering her quarterly monitoring appointments. Please bill the insurance directly and send any remaining balances to her home address. The third call was to Citibank. I need to remove the automatic payment for the mortgage on 142 Maple Street. I've been covering those payments for 2 years. Sir, if those payments stop, the account will become delinquent within 30 days. I understand. The fourth call was to Pacific Gas and Electric. Please remove the secondary payment method on account number 7749. I'll no longer be covering utility bills for that address. I made 12 more calls that afternoon. Car insurance payments for both of my parents' vehicles. The lawn service I'd been paying for since Mom couldn't maintain the yard during chemotherapy. The housekeeper who came twice monthly. The grocery delivery service that had made Mom's life easier during recovery. Every service I'd been quietly covering for 2 years, I methodically canceled. On January 3rd, I moved into a downtown loft that cost $2,800 monthly, more than triple what I'd been paying at home, but worth it for the space and privacy my business required. I didn't tell my parents about the insurance cancellations. I didn't mention the mortgage payments or utilities. I hugged Mom goodbye, thanked them for letting me stay during my rebuilding years, and promised to visit soon. 2 weeks later Mom called. There's been some kind of mistake with my insurance, she said, sounding confused. They're saying my cancer monitoring appointments aren't covered under my current plan. The oncology center wants $1,200 for last week's appointment. That's strange, I replied. Did you call the insurance company? Your father spent an hour on the phone with them. They keep saying something about a supplemental policy being canceled, but we never had a supplemental policy. I made sympathetic sounds while reviewing client reports at my new desk. Insurance companies are so complicated. I'm sure you'll figure it out. 3 days later, Dad called about the mortgage. The bank says we're behind on payments, he said, panic clear in his voice. They're claiming the last payment was in December, but I know the automatic withdrawal should have happened in January. Maybe it's a processing delay? I suggested. They want $2,100 immediately plus a $75 late fee. I don't understand what happened to the automatic payment. Technology glitches happen, I said calmly. I'm sure you can get it sorted out. By the end of January, the calls were coming daily. The lawn service wanted $340 for 3 months of unpaid bills. The housekeeper demanded $280 in back payments. Pacific Gas and Electric had sent a disconnect notice. Car insurance for both vehicles had been canceled for non-payment. Mom called crying on February 1st. I don't understand what's happening, she sobbed. All these bills are coming due at once and none of our automatic payments are working. The insurance company says I owe $4,800 for medical appointments, and if I don't pay, they'll send it to collections. I listened to her cry while I reviewed my business profit reports. January had been my best month ever, $47,000 in revenue. Moving out had eliminated my family expenses and freed up almost $20,000 monthly. Can you ask Sarah to help with some of the bills? I suggested gently. Sarah's barely covering her own expenses, Mom replied. And she's trying to save money for her own place eventually. We can't ask her to pay household bills when she's our guest. Our guest. That's what she called the daughter who'd taken my room and displaced me from the house I'd been supporting financially. What about Dad's pension and Social Security? I asked. That covers basic food and utilities but not these extra expenses. During the cancer treatment, everything seemed to work itself out. The insurance covered more than expected and somehow all the bills got paid. I thought we were managing fine on Dad's income. They'd never been managing on Dad's income. For 2 years I'd been covering 60% of their living expenses. The mortgage, the utilities, the insurance, the medical bills, the services that made Mom's life manageable during and after cancer treatment. But they'd never asked how the money appeared. They'd never wondered why insurance claims processed so smoothly. They'd never questioned how a family with $3,200 monthly income could afford a $225,000 cancer treatment. February 15th brought the foreclosure notice. Dad called sobbing. "We're going to lose the house. The bank wants 3 months' payments immediately, $6,300, or they'll start foreclosure proceedings. I don't know how this happened. The automatic payments worked for years." "I'm so sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it. I didn't want them to lose their home. But I wasn't going to pay their mortgage while Sarah lived in my former room rent-free. "Is there any way?" Dad's voice trailed off. "Could you possibly help us with a loan? I know you're doing well with your business." I paused, considering. They were asking for help now, but 3 months ago, they'd prioritized Sarah's comfort over my housing. They'd never acknowledged the financial support I'd provided. They'd never asked how their bills got paid during Mom's treatment. "Dad, I wish I could, but I've got a lot of business expenses right now. The new office space, equipment purchases. My available cash is tied up." It wasn't true. I had $85,000 sitting in business savings. But they'd made their choice about family priorities. March brought desperation. The electricity was shut off on March 3rd. The gas was shut off on March 7th. Sarah had to move the kids to Marcus's house temporarily because the house was unlivable without utilities. Mom called sobbing. "Sarah's talking about moving back to Portland. She says we can't provide a stable environment for the kids. After everything we've done to support her recovery from the divorce." "That's probably for the best," I said gently. "She needs to rebuild her independence anyway." "But she's family," Mom cried. "She needs us right now." "Maybe she needs to figure out how to support herself," I replied. The conversation ended with Mom hanging up on me. On March 15th, I got a text from Sarah. "Mom and Dad are losing their house because of unpaid bills. They think you could help but won't. This is your family. How can you be so selfish?" I replied, "I lived there for 2 years, paid rent every month and helped however I could. When you needed my room, I moved out without complaint. Now they're asking for money I don't have available. I'm sorry things are difficult." Sarah's response came immediately. "You have a successful business. Don't lie about not having money. You're choosing to let your parents become homeless rather than help family." I didn't respond. Let her believe I was selfish. It was easier than explaining that I'd spent $275,000 keeping that family afloat while they credited good insurance and Dad's pension for their financial stability. The foreclosure sale was scheduled for April 12th. On April 1st, Mom made one final call. "Please," she whispered into the phone. "We'll lose everything. 40 years of marriage and we'll lose our home. I know I hurt you by asking you to move out. I know Sarah took your place in the house. But we're desperate." I sat in my beautiful loft office, looking out at the city skyline, listening to the woman whose life I'd saved with a $250,000 investment. The woman who'd hugged me and called me her hero. The woman who'd kicked me out 3 months later for the golden child who couldn't cover her own car payment. "Mom, I understand you're scared. But I can't take responsibility for everyone else's financial problems. You and Dad are adults. Sarah's an adult. Everyone needs to figure out their own solutions." "You don't understand," she cried. "We never asked for help before. We've always been independent." That was the moment I realized they genuinely didn't know. 2 years of payments and they thought their bills had paid themselves. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How did you think the cancer treatment got paid for?" Silence. "The $225,000 in medical bills. Your insurance covered 60%. How did you think the other $90,000 got handled?" More silence. "And during treatment when you couldn't work and Dad was stressed, how do you think the mortgage got paid every month?" I could hear her breathing, but she didn't speak. "The supplemental insurance that covered your monitoring appointments. The lawn service during your recovery. The housekeeper who helped when you were too weak to clean. How do you think those bills were managed?" Finally she whispered, "I don't know. I thought we were just managing better than expected." "You were managing because someone else was paying." The silence stretched for 30 seconds. "Who?" she asked. "Me, Mom. For 2 years I covered your medical bills, your mortgage, your utilities, your insurance, your services. Every month I spent $15,000 to $20,000 keeping this family stable." "That's impossible," she breathed. "I can show you bank records. wire transfer receipts, insurance payment confirmations. Every bill you thought was being handled by insurance or Dad's pension was actually being covered by my business income. I could hear her crying. When you asked me to move out for Sarah, you weren't just asking me to give up my room. You were asking me to give up my home while continuing to pay for yours. Sarah moved into the room I was paying rent for, in the house I was supporting financially, while you asked me to find my own place. We didn't know, Mom sobbed. You didn't ask. For 2 years you never wondered how the money worked. You just accepted that cancer treatment was affordable and life was manageable. Why didn't you tell us? Because you never asked. And because I wanted to help. But when you chose Sarah's comfort over my housing, you made it clear where your priorities were. We can fix this, she said desperately. Sarah can move out. You can come back. We'll figure out the bills together. Mom, I have my own place now. My business requires professional space. And I'm not going to move back into a house where I was disposable when someone else needed my room. So you'll let us lose our home? I looked out my office window at the city I could now enjoy living in, the space where I could build my business without family chaos, the independence I'd gained by stepping away from financial responsibility for adults who'd never appreciated the support. I'll let you figure out your own financial situation, just like I figured out mine. After everything we've done for you? What exactly have you done for me? The question hung in the air. She couldn't answer because there wasn't an answer. For 2 years the support had flowed in one direction. From my business account to their household needs. We raised you, she said finally. And I spent $275,000 keeping you stable during your cancer treatment. I think we're even. I hung up the phone. The foreclosure sale happened on schedule. Mom and Dad moved into a senior living apartment that cost $1,800 monthly, nearly their entire Social Security income. Sarah moved back to Portland with the kids, where she got a full-time job and rented a 2-bedroom apartment she could actually afford. I sent Mom a card on her birthday 6 months later. Inside I wrote, I hope you're doing well in your new home. I'm grateful your cancer remains in remission. Love, your son who saved your life. She never responded. My business grew to $75,000 monthly revenue by the end of that year. I bought a house with a guest room that stays empty most of the time, because I learned that sometimes the people you sacrifice for will choose someone else the moment it's convenient. But every month, I put $2,000 in a savings account labeled Mom's Emergency Fund. Because despite everything, if her cancer comes back, I'll pay for her treatment again. That's the difference between us. She chose favorites when it was easy. I choose family even when it's hard. But I'll never choose to be disposable again.